When you play the Game of Thrones,
Subscribe and like.
you die. There is no middle ground.
All right, hello YouTube. Welcome back to the Grease Comedy YouTube channel. Today's video, we're going to be talking day 15 of the 25 Days of Winter, and specifically, we're going to be talking about Lady Stoneheart, the Brotherhood Without Banners, and Thoros of Myr. Now, their plotline to me is one of my favorites, especially because I believe Arya will be involved with their plotline towards, the middle to the second half of the story. But their organization as a whole is very interesting because you take a look at the way that the Brotherhood Without Banners started, right? They were an organization that was trying to kind of bring justice to some of the war crimes being done to the people following, Ned and Robert's orders, and all of that stuff. And you look at that organization, how it's changed. It kind of reflects Arya in a lot of ways, where he went from this character who didn't really, explore the world, grew up a Stark, and she's thrust into trying to escape King's Landing and all these things. And as she grows as a character, she becomes more vengeful through the things that she's seen. And the Brotherhood Without Banners are quite similar, right? They start working for themselves, being greedy and more criminal-like, the things that they were trying to avoid and stop. And you think about when Lady Stoneheart is revived, they become more about revenge and blinded by hatred and anger and avenging the Red Wedding. And so you think about the parallels that you have between Arya and I think the Brotherhood Without Banners, who I believe their plots are almost intertwined because in a lot of ways they carry the same themes, they carry the same plot line. It's just a bit different, right? Arya with the Phases Men and Lady Stoneheart and the Brotherhood Without Banners kind of fixing up and finishing, hopefully, the Riverland plot in this book specifically. So let's kind of refresh ourselves, figure out where we have Lady Stoneheart and the Brotherhood Without Banners, and where we can maybe look into the future in Winds of Winter. So the last we truly see of the Brotherhood Without Banners, which is confirmed, right? There's other moments where we're going to make some speculations, but the last time we truly see them is at the end of A Feast for Crows when Brienne is captured by them. And we have this haunting scene where we see Lady Stoneheart basically condemning Brienne to death because of having some Lannister sword, and she's kind of dressed very fashionably and richly. And she kind of looks like, on the onset, if you don't know Brienne's mission, you don't know what's going on, she looks like she's become a Lannister, supporter, more or less, right? And so she's given this ultimatum: either hang and die or bring her Jaime Lannister. It's basically a test to prove her actual loyalty. And it also goes a little bit further because in the book, it was a bit different than the show. When Robb Stark is killed in front of Catelyn's eyes, it is said Jaime Lannister sends his regards, because he does basically say that when he leaves Roose Bolton. And in the show, it's similar. Like Jaime says, send their regards, but it's not said that way. Roose just says the Lannisters send their regards, so it's not directly on Jaime. It's just on the Lannisters as a whole. And so here it's a bit different, right? There is this painted hatred towards the character of Jaime Lannister by Catelyn, and, well, I would say Lady Stoneheart. She's not much of Catelyn anymore because she's consumed by this anger and hatred and vengeance, something that also plagues the character of Arya Stark. And so we see Brienne then pop up for one quick chapter in A Dance with Dragons where she convinces Jaime to go with her because she basically says, the Hound has one of Catelyn's daughters and she's going to kill her unless you come alone. Very suspect. I would not trust that at all. Brienne looks completely battered, and Jaime goes along with it because he really feels like he's forced to. And so that's where we kind of leave off with that. But there's something else here that's even more important. When we see Jaime Lannister at the Siege of Riverrun, and another reason why, Catelyn wouldn't really like Jaime, I should say Lady Stoneheart, I keep saying Catelyn, but another reason is Jaime Lannister is the one that takes the Tully home. He installs his aunt in a fray upon the Tully household. And yes, he didn't necessarily attack them with swords, but he was sieging them. He was going against the Tullys. And so that would have been known by a character that we believe is Tom of Seven Streams. Now, this character is very integral because it seems like he's been able to spread some information. It seems like a certain Frey lord dies because of this information that Tom was able to, give to probably the Brotherhood Without Banners. And now he has a place at Riverrun. He is a direct in to what is going on in the inner workings of the Freys. And so that's going to be important when we have this idea of a, revenge Red Wedding or Red Wedding 2.0, whichever terminology you want to use for it. because you have somebody that's going to be a spy for you, be able to maybe do some things very similar to like Mance in Winterfell at this time. And you have this character of Jaime Lannister, who's likely going to be captured by Lady Stoneheart. Now, I personally do not believe this will be the end for Jaime Lannister. I think there's a number of things that could happen with this character of Jaime, one of which could be a trial by combat. Now, if there is a trial by combat, I think Brienne will step in for Jaime. That makes the most sense. It'll be interesting to see who she would have to fight, because I think of anybody at the Brotherhood Without Banners, I think Brienne could beat them all. So I think Jaime will survive if there is a trial by combat, if Lady Stoneheart gives him that, which could be very doubtful. This could occur before, where they could use the, Jaime character to get them into this wedding that's going to be taking place, or they could, wait till after, right? Either way, you could see this happening before or after. Maybe he wins a trial by combat, but they don't release him, right? They use him a little bit more. And so that kind of leads us to this wedding we know is happening with the Freys. It's the perfect opportunity for this revenge red wedding, basically what's been foreshadowed the whole, I would say, Feast for Crows and Dance Dragons books. And this would be the time to kind of, I would say, in my opinion, just like how you're seeing in the North, overthrow the quote-unquote villains. Because again, like I've talked about so much, is a lot of these villainous characters just can't be empowered. They can't be alive by the end of Winds of Winter, because you need the country to somewhat be unified, because you're going to have a threat of the others. If everybody is just not unified whatsoever and you have complete division, how are you going to even have a chance against that threat? It was something that the show really struggled with. How do you, get Daenerys and Jon together, or maybe the Lannisters together? How do you get all those things together to where you have a battle that you can conceivably see that the living could maybe win, or at least do enough to where you have a standoff to where maybe there's a compromise between both sides? And so I think this, Revenge Red Wedding would settle the issue of the Freys, getting the Tullys back into power. The Tullys, obviously, they're going to like the Starks, so then those are instantly going to be allied up. You're going to have the Vale army, more than likely coming from the east. They could unite. And so you could see all the kind of pieces coming into play, where you have all the kingdoms kind of coming together, or at least some of them. And so I think that's going to be vital to this. And so when we see this Revenge Red Wedding, I think it's going to be painted as quite a dark point of the book, given the fact that, yes, we don't like the Freys, or at least some of us don't like the Freys. This community very much likes the Freys, so they might not like this part, but it does make sense that we're going to see, people being brutally killed. There's going to be people at this wedding that had nothing to do with the Red Wedding. You could see servants being killed, soldiers who are maybe just following orders, or maybe they were just not even present at the Red Wedding. Maybe they were just, in relation to the Frey army. They're basically their lords. And so I think you're going to see a butchery. I think you're going to see Arya then coming back into the story, finding her mother and what she's become. It's kind of a reflection of what Arya's become. Arya has been consumed by getting revenge and hatred, and her lists and her names. It's something that the Faceless Men have tried to iron out of her. The Faceless Men kill, because of money, or, donations, whatever you want to call it, not because of the rationale, right? You're not always killing the good person or the bad person. It's just you're killing, right? And so part of that is going to come into a play when you get to Arya and you see this Red Wedding, or the Revenge Red Wedding, happening. And it's horrible. It's brutal. And Lady Stoneheart has been consumed by this. And I've always thought the natural end for Lady Stoneheart is, I do think she has to die in this book. Again, I don't think this is another character that can be around by the time of Dream of Spring. I think Arya will kill her mother. And I think this has been hinted at the fact that Arya has gone by a nickname of Mercy. You look at the idea of Mother's Mercy. I think it makes so much sense for Arya to see what she could possibly become, like her mother has become. And that being the thing that wakes her up, that changes her trajectory as a character and gets her to process and think about the things that she's kind of been doing so far into the books. I think this is a great time for that. And so I think Lady Stoneheart and Arya's plot, I think it's one of the most underrated plots of probably all of the Winds of Winter plot lines. When I see people talk about Winds of Winter, I see a lot of people talk about the North plot line, the Jon Con plot line, Daenerys' plot line even, Cersei's plot, all these different plot lines. And I almost feel like the Arya plot line kind of gets forgotten about just because it wasn't a big plot line in the last two books. She only has 5 chapters in the last 2 compared to, A Clash of Kings and Storm of Swords. She is a dominant POV in those 2 books. Not so much in the first book. She's also kind of very much a side character in book 1. She has some of the least amount of chapters in the first book. I think her, her plot line gets forgotten about. And I think that she's on such an impactful character journey, right? I think her chapters in A Dance with Dragons are some of her best in terms of feast and dance. And it's really excited me for what we could see from the character moving into it. And Lady Stoneheart is no different, right? This is still at least the Catelyn character, where it's you have this character progression into what Lady Stoneheart has become. And maybe she realizes at the end that, she wants Arya to kill her, right? She has nothing left to live for. Seeing her daughter and seeing what she's done and seeing what, Catelyn herself has done, or whatever part of her is left, would be a really awesome moment. And so I think for the character of Lady Stoneheart, that's kind of where she's going to go. Now, moving towards Thoros, there's not a lot to talk about this character in terms of upfront. I think he'll be more, after Lady Stoneheart is gone. I could very easily see him being somebody that's pushing back in a lot of what Lady Stoneheart is doing. And I think that what is going to occur with the Brotherhood with Banners at large after this event is they take a step back. I think a lot of these men, when they see what Thoros is telling them and kind of pushing back on some of these ideas, and Arya comes and even kills her mother, I think a lot of these men will have lost their way. And I think that leads perfectly to what the Brotherhood Without Banners was originally supposed to be, protecting the innocent and the people. What better way of doing that is going to this threat of the others? And when you have a character like Thoros, who, is a fire priest, he worships R'hllor, that is what R'hllor seems to be calling characters like Mel to. Maybe he even gets some visions of them fighting in the snows. And also you have the character of Arya. Maybe Arya could have this really interesting character arc where at one point she was a captive of the Brotherhood Without Banners, but she comes back to almost command them. As Catelyn, her mother, has died, she maybe, alongside of Thoros, kind of leads them for a little while. You could also have the character like the Hound show up in this plot as well, given the fact that maybe we see something like how the show happened, where maybe where he's staying, it gets attacked and the Hound is forced to go back to this life of violence and all those things. I think it'd be really interesting. And even the Hound could also be part of this maybe trial by combat Jaime could have if he finds his way into the Brotherhood Without Banners, because of how broken of a man he has also become. Again, that would also be really cool if we got to see Arya and the Hound have a reunion as well. But either way, I think the end point for the Brotherhood Without Banners and also Arya as a whole, Thoros, is going to be heading north, right? Heading to see Jon and to defend the living. That to me is what their goal is going to be going forward. So again, another video I really enjoyed talking about. I really like the plot line that's been set up by George and the Riverlands. You could also see other characters being prominent figures here with the Blackfish, Edmure. Could be a lot of interesting ways you can go with this plot line. But yeah, I hope you guys all have enjoyed. We will be kind of going more towards now the Crownlands, talking about specifically King's Landing, as we're talking about the High Sparrow, Tommen and Myrcella. We got Randall Tarley up next. So hope you guys have all enjoyed, and I'll see you guys all in the next one. Bye, guys.